The Valley Current.
Hey, Jack.
I mean, I'm very impressed by what you did at the Beverly Hills Bar Association, and also very impressed at the way you've integrated AI tools into your practice. And I thought, Jesus, we should have you on the show because Silicon Valley is so advanced, but I think to some degree you're way more advanced in New York in the way you're using it in what's fundamentally a small practice, right?
It is. I mean, we're a total team of 10. And if it wasn't for use of AI, we would be very overworked, because I remember being there 2 years ago and it's just taken so many different loads off.
So tell me more about how you got interested, because I don't think your background was in computer science. My background was actually in getting a master's degree in computer science in New York. I grew up in New York. I was born in Queens and grew up in Brooklyn and went to school in Manhattan and got a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in computer, what back then it was called computer and information science, and it was mainframe computing. I don't think that's your journey, but tell us what your journey was to get to the point where you became a member of the New York Bar and have your own practice in New York City.
Well, actually, my undergrad is computer information systems from Stony Brook University.
Okay, great. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before that, I ran an IT company starting at age 14, probably. By the time I was in college, I was already on my second iteration of the same company. It was called Spider International, and we wrote custom software and set up custom hardware for lawyers and doctors at the time. Mostly focused on small practices that were scared of embracing technology. And we tried to drag them kicking and screaming into the idea of using a computer, of connecting to the internet, of maybe, just maybe even considering a website, things like that. So that was a lot of fun back then. And my overall journey started in the Soviet Union, immigrated here in 1989 with a little layover in Italy for almost a year. We got stranded there. Thank you, U.S. immigration system. But it all worked out in the end, one way or another. So yeah, ended up on Long Island in New York, did high school there, did a lot of computer science stuff starting in high school. College was computer science, computer information systems rather, with a minor in applied mathematics. All during and after college, I was always engaged with Spider International and the custom software bits. Then went on to law school. I thought I was going to end up probably in Silicon Valley in intellectual property law, exactly where you'd expect that kind of background to take you.
Right.
And then after taking one class in intellectual property, I realized I'd rather gnaw my own leg off and beat myself to death with it than ever have to do intellectual property law as a transactional thing on a daily basis for a living. It just felt too dry, too boring, etc. Conveniently, when I left law school, the economy imploded. Familiar to listeners today, and lawyers were being fired left and right. If you remember, 2006 was not a great time to graduate law school.
Right.
And so I didn't even consider going and being an associate anywhere. I started a high-tech fintech. Well, first I went back to Spider International, did some more in the legal software world for small firms, but primarily I saw the real estate collapse of 2008 coming and started Option Real. That was the nation's, I think, first software-based high-speed loan modification submission platform.
Wow.
So in the height of the foreclosure crisis, where everybody else was doing all of this by hand, we were able to upload documents, sort them, figure out. I created something called the Murray score, which was named in honor of my high school math teacher,
Nice.
Which was essentially like a credit score. But instead of being for, determining future credit worthiness, it calculated your likelihood to get approved for a loan modification based on the HAMP guidelines.
Nice.
Because as a fellow programmer, the guidelines could be 500 pages and you and I could suffer trying to figure out what applies in any given case. But if you plug them all into a computer and then you drop in the data, well, even back then, we were able to use software very successfully to process lots and lots of files. And that's how I rode through the financial crisis of 2008.
Wow.
By 2010, lawyers were kind of in demand again. At this point, I had so much experience in loss mitigation from the financial side that it almost seemed obvious to go into real estate law, particularly into foreclosures. And then fast forward, 15 years just about now. And I'm running a firm that does real estate and commercial litigation and complex transactions. We leverage technology for everything you can think of. We've integrated probably every application we could think of to work together as best possible, subject, of course, to all the ethics rules and all of the fun requirements that data not wander too far.
Right.
But now I teach for the New York State Bar, the American Bar, the Pennsylvania Bar, the Idaho Bar. I can just go on listing states for a while, but Beverly Hills Bar for that matter. And I basically do a traveling show on legal technology. I consult to other law firms on tech implementation and honestly, more than anything, tech training.
Right.
Because as you may recall from my first Beverly Hills Bar presentation, Microsoft Word is still something that most lawyers struggle with.
Right.
And that's like a contractor struggling to use his drill.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to get better at the fundamentals.
Right.
So I try to teach a lot of that. I try to teach on consulting. It's easy enough to say to anybody they need the shiniest new thing that'll cost whatever amount of money, as if that will solve their problems. It's so much more effective to actually teach people to use the tools, whether it's ones they have to buy or often ones they already have,
right,
to achieve way greater levels of efficiency. So that begins at home, and I train all of my staff on all of the most efficient uses of technology. Everybody's required to be all kinds of device-based. We do not do paper. We do not do local files. We do not do portable storage. All of that went out of the window years ago. We manage everything in our practice management system, and now we use AI to help with just about every daily task.
Well, I saw you in real time, and very few lawyers are willing to do this, actually have like 3 or 4 windows, one with ChatGPT, one with Claude, one with something else. And you basically said, we're going to start this thing cooking. And you went into deep research mode on one thing, and then you did another thing. I said, this guy is way ahead of me, and I've been doing this for a while. And I saw the business plans, the original business plans for Anthropic and OpenAI, and thought, man, these guys are going to be off to the races. And they got venture capital very quickly, and they got their support from Microsoft and other big players very quickly. I am invested, but fundamentally, no one really saw the impact, and many lawyers still don't understand it. And most of my older partners at my first law firm, Fenwick and West, when I started, it was Davis, Stafford, Kelman, and Fenwick way back. We started Apple Computer way back in the 1970s. We filed the incorporation papers for Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. We were thought of as, hey, we're like the most advanced lawyers doing computer law. I eventually left and started Computer Law Group, which is the firm I still operate. But fundamentally, we never imagined this is going to enter the legal field in a major way. We were sort of shy of that. You kind of embraced it based on the history that you've just told me, where you were basically in the tech world before you were in the law world in a real way. And most of us went directly from various, business schools and law schools and combination business schools, law schools, right into practice without running a tech company the way you did it. So you would have been a perfect fit for our group had you come out to Silicon Valley and interviewed with us. I could tell you that. But at the same time, you've actually sort of eaten your own dog food and create the dog food and perfect the dog food, which I think is an amazing thing. So I'm curious, how many tools, obviously Microsoft Office and Word and Excel and all those things are supposed to play so well together. And arguably Microsoft should have done this a long time ago, but they haven't. But how many tools would you say are kind of key to your practice? Do you have your own practice management software, or are you using one of the tools or one of the platforms that are out there? Like, what would you list as your top 10?
I'll give you my entire tech stack. It's pretty straightforward, actually. No, at this point, I don't bother with my own practice management system. Many, many months ago, I did. But at some point, I realized that I'm not going to keep up with a company like Clio.
Right.
They're just going to have too many integrations. And for me to write my own integrations with APIs from everybody,
right.
I mean, I can run an IT company or I can run a law firm. I really didn't have the time to do both.
Right.
Could I have really put an effort in? Yes, but realistically, Clio makes a great product for my needs, and it integrates with everything else I can think of.
Right.
And whenever I go to ABA's tech show, which I was just at, amazing program, you got to go every year.
Right.
Whenever I go there and I see new vendors that have some new exciting tool that I might want, the first question I ask, and the answer is usually yes, is do you integrate with Clio? Now, if I did my own practice management system, even if it was amazing, who's going to write integrations for me?
Right.
So I'm not going to compete with them. Clio is my practice management system. QuickBooks Online is my accounting and bookkeeping system. It's also my payroll system. I like to keep everything in one place because, well, keeps it more organized. Obviously, Office 365 for Word, Excel, all of its fun stuff, PowerPoint. We also use the Google Suite, the Google Workspace Suite. We use that primarily for emails and calendars and for Google Voice.
Right.
And we use the Microsoft Suite for Word, basically for Office and OneDrive.
Right.
And then beyond that, there's the Adobe Acrobat Suite, another required tool for lawyers.
Right.
And then beyond that, there's no real software loaded on our machines. Everything else is
in the cloud.
Well, not that the practice management system is loaded on our machines, but yeah, everything's basically in the cloud. The tools that I use beyond the ones just named, mostly websites, be it research websites or primarily these days AI tools like Claude, ChatGPT. Primarily these days, the ChatGPT Deep Research. I have to say their newest version, extremely impressive. With its help, I can do a motion that used to take 20 hours in about 2 hours.
Right.
And in reality, of those 2 hours, I'm spending about 60 to 90 minutes just waiting for the output from the deep research.
Well, you're thinking about how you're going to make your major point, because most people don't realize that the judge's clerk is kind of looking for the winning point and kind of skims over all the other stuff that they've heard over and over again, like the standards for summary judgment and all that. They don't focus on any of that. They focus on what's the winning point, and that's what you're probably thinking about as you wait for that research to finish. But I'm kind of curious, are you just dumped Westlaw and Lexis and just gone directly with the view that you can get all this stuff in one form or another, right from Google Scholar, that sort of thing? Or are you still paying for, as most lawyers are, sometimes ones and often both, Lexis and Westlaw?
I am proud to say that I haven't ever during my career paid for Westlaw or Lexis.
Wow.
Back when I was an associate in 2010, I don't remember. I think the firm I was at had Westlaw. It could have been Lexis. Didn't really make any difference to me.
Right.
I never appreciated either of them. I found Google Scholar. As soon as they loaded all of New York law, that became, well, they had federal law, they had New York law. That was primarily all I cared about. It was all there. It was all easily searchable. And to techie, the Google interface is a lot more pleasurable to deal with than Westlaw and Lexis.
Right.
They were clunky, they were cumbersome, and to this day, I am irritated by the idea of key sites and Boolean searches. I mean, I know how to do them better than most, but I'm just annoyed to have to.
Right. Right. It's sort of like they're living in the 1970s and 1980s still in their way they operate. And certainly they've got to be worried that these tools and what Google has done has pretty much made it easy to have what you have, because I did read your article in the recent I think it was in the New York Journal, called The Virtual Law Firm. I found that in sort of looking through various things about you. Actually, I still get the paper version of that because I'm licensed in New York as well as California. And I was like, wow, wait a minute, he's going to be on the show. I got to read this article. And I thought it was great because you run effectively a virtual law firm with the 10 folks that you have, right?
I do. I mean, we have physical offices, and I actually do enjoy coming into the physical office from time to time. I'm there most days, actually, as long as I'm not traveling. Like last week, I was in Chicago for all of Tech Show. A couple of weeks from now, I'll be in Puerto Rico for the spring meeting of the ABA. So, I'm constantly on the road, on the go. So I need my firm to be flexible, and for me to be able to run my firm, manage my cases, deal with my clients and staff from anywhere at any time of day, regardless of what time zone I might be in.
Right.
And so that's kind of a necessity. I love being in the office whenever I can. I was there today. It was great. I get to see my staff. I get to interact with people. It's a small firm, so really my staff and my friends are kind of the same thing.
Because you commute from where you live in Long Island. I mean, my parents always had a place in either Port Jefferson or Miller Place, and obviously I remember going out to visit them while I was in school in Manhattan, and getting on the Long Island Railroad and making my way out, or using a car to get out on what it was at the Long Island Expressway. You make that commute, right, to get into the city, because your offices are right in New York City proper, correct?
Well, I actually avoid the Manhattan office as best I can, and so does just about every one of the staff. We also have a Floral Park office.
Okay.
And the Floral Park office has the advantage of having its own parking lot with assigned parking.
Nice.
And way more space, and the easy ability to go outside and go for a walk through the village of Floral Park, where they have one of the best pizzerias that you're going to find in New York City or vicinities.
What's the name? What's the name of the pizzeria? Because I'm always interested when I get to New York City or anywhere around New York, finding out where are people getting the best pizza these days.
Oh, I'll tell you the two best pizzerias on Long Island, which is also the two best pizzerias in the New York metro area. Mm-hmm. One is actually in Comac. Its name is Original Brooklyn Pizza.
Okay.
And the other one's in Floral Park, and that's called Village Pizza. And Village Pizza I like particularly because they don't bother with those flavorless black olives that come in little pre-cut circles.
Right.
They real Kalamata olives. So you got that flavor that really makes all the difference in the world.
Well, Alexander, you're amazing, and I'd love to tell folks how they reach you, and tell many lawyers and law firms listen to this show, how would they reach you if they want to get your consulting on how to build a more advanced practice? Because I have to say, I've observed you in action, and you clearly are doing it. You're not just talking about it. You are actually doing the stuff that all of us will eventually have to do. I would say you're probably at least 5 years ahead of most big law firms, and you're probably at least a year to 2 years ahead of most smaller law firms, and maybe far more than that. And you represent the future. And I think somebody in the Beverly Hills Bar Association presentation raised their hand and said, so are you just managing all these windows that are sort of like your associates running around doing stuff? And you said, yeah. And then I'm double checking their work. That's my job now. That's what I do. And I thought that was such a correct an honest answer about what you do when you harness what you had, I think, like 7 windows open, like 7 assistants running at the same time. You really do what you said you do. And it's amazing.
Easiest way to schedule a call with me and discuss things is to either visit my website, paykinlaw.net. So that's PAYKINLAW.net. On there, you can, if you want to speak to me personally and not just one of the attorneys in the firm, obviously, if you need commercial or real estate litigation, we've got great attorneys. But if you want to speak to me personally about tech, just go into my profile in the attorneys tab for the firm.
Right.
And then you can schedule a free initial consultation, and we can spend half an hour discussing tech needs, your tech picture, and where it is you're looking to go.
Right.
Always happy to help other lawyers join us in the 21st century. It's great out here. I'm not suggesting to anybody that by becoming more efficient, you're going to make tons more money, because we are not. Money. Well, we're not an unlimited industry. It's not like if I can do 1,000 foreclosures an hour, there's 1,000 people outside my door that need foreclosures.
Right.
So it doesn't work like that. In reality, it's the work smarter, not harder approach of you may still make the same amount of money you made last year, but imagine if you could do it with half the stress, half the work, and with a lot more time to spend with your family while generating a better work product than you did last year.
Right. That's a huge statement, and we all should embrace it. But let me ask you one last question. I interviewed, and I think they're going to come on the show, these guys that came up with a litigation prediction tool and presented and became a finalist at the ABA Tech Show last week in Chicago. Did you spend any time with them? I'm trying to remember their name that starts with the letter C.
I remember who you're talking about, and I should know this as a Tech Show.
It's an Israeli firm. It's an Israeli firm. It's a group of Israelis.
Yes. Yep, I got to play with their product. It's quite interesting, honestly. I wish I could remember their name. But there was a lot of interesting products that really appeared at Tech Show for the first time this year. Good Fact was pretty impressive if you saw what they did. They're an AI tool that essentially makes litigation drafting so much more point and clicky.
Right.
But
so were you surprised that they were actually going in an area that most lawyers think is really just perfectly unsuitable, which is the experience, 40, 45 years, some lawyers even now 50 years. I just talked to a lawyer, Beverly Hills Bar Association, 50 years in practice, still practicing, still says he never worked in a day in his life because he loves what he does. And he's like, I think it's a lawyer's judgment call. And you're never going to get AI to give you some predictive calculation with a percentage of what the likelihood of success of a case will be. And these guys are challenging that. They're literally saying, we're going to give you a percentage outcome likelihood with a list of analogous cases that we're drawing from for what sounds like in the initial version is more of like a personal injury case analyzer, but obviously they'll go from there to other cases as well. I'm sure they won't limit themselves. So what's your view on that as we end the show? Just tell folks what you think. Do you think it's going to go that far, that it's going to actually displace some of a lawyer's judgment from a calculation or a predictive analysis point of view?
Not particularly. In reality, look at it this way. We all use tools to help us make decisions. And the better our tools are, presumably the better decisions we're going to make.
Right.
You're going to decide on where you're going to drive based on what your car's navigation system tells you about the traffic.
Right.
Does that mean the car took away your decision-making skills as a driver? I mean, maybe to some degree, you'll start relying on the technology. And if it's good and you see that it's more effective than using your own gut, you will then use it more, and presumably it will work better for you. Mm-hmm. So to the extent the tech is better than the lawyer's own previous judgment and he sees that in action, maybe that lawyer will say, you know what, I can't trust my gut, but this thing's right 98% of the time.
Right.
At the same time, much like with drafting and AI, while I absolutely love having my drafting AI take care of all of the tedium of preparing a brief, I first review everything myself. I make a decision on what it is I want to argue. I make a determination on whether I think they're good arguments. Now, I may ask the AI to play devil's advocate and to argue with me. And that way I can refine my arguments and make sure that my argument is as good as it's going to be. And then when I identify my arguments, I can tell the AI to write them up really prettily and tell it to put on its hat of the most eloquent attorney ever, and to write me a brief that will make the judge weep. And it will do a much better job than I will, because I don't know anybody who can write as eloquently and as quickly as Claude.ai. I really don't.
And without typos and without typographical errors to boot, right?
Exactly. And instantly, and in my voice if I choose to ask for it.
Right.
And that part's great. But I still make all the decision about what goes in. And then I retain editorial discretion, meaning I will then read the thing remove the parts I don't agree with, add the things I want, change case law if it got hallucinated or if it doesn't say what it should, or if I just don't like that case.
Right.
And I will make the document my own. But much like an Excel spreadsheet calculating an entire table worth of data so I don't have to sit there with a calculator or with a pen and paper, I don't think that made accountants and statisticians any less skilled at their jobs. I think it gave them tools that made their jobs go fast.
Right.
And if we could make that part go fast, it gives us a lot more time to discuss and theorize the cases, review evidence, interrogate our clients to get more facts out of them so we can dump them into the AI and make better briefs.
Absolutely.
But we can work as lawyers rather than as typists. Because let's face it, you can probably think up a brief in your mind in about 2 minutes after reviewing all the evidence. And you can give the bullet points to a staff member in another 5 minutes. But then it's going to take that person 10 or 20 hours to spit out the thing at you.
And it won't be as good. It won't be as good. It won't be as good as your supervision of the tools that you've mastered.
Exactly. And this way, you think of all the good strategies, the machine prepares the good draft, you edit and tweak, make it accurate if it's not, and then off it goes. Everybody wins.
It's a good statement to end on, and I hope to have you back on the show when you start to look at some of these more advanced products and get your input on them, because I do think the world is changing and is changing fast, and you're ahead of the pack, so congratulations to you. I'm very impressed by what you're doing, Alexander Paykin, and you need to be on more lawyers' radar and more law firms' radars, including Big Law, because you are leading the pack on really the 22nd century practice of law, because you're heading there a lot faster than most of us. And I'm even behind you, and I'm quite a bit older than you. So congratulations, sir. Take care.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.